On February of 2024, two of the major economic powerhouses, that is United Kingdom and Japan, fell into a technical recession. And this is not all, because many other countries like Finland, New Zealand and Ireland also went into a technical recession in the same period of time. And this is just tip of the iceberg, because 20 other major economies of the world are either at the brink or are at the cusp of falling into a technical recession. Now, on one hand, we see that the major economies are slipping into a technical recession. On the other hand, we see India's GDP growing at a massive and a whopping 8.4% in the quarter third of the financial year 2023-2024. Now, this makes us question that is global recession 2024 a reality, or is it just an illusion? Is it an over-exaggeration by the economists, or is there something more to the situation than what meets the eye? Now, throughout this session, we'll be trying to answer all these questions which might come up in your mind. Hi, my name is Preetpal Singh, and today's topic is Global Recession 2024. Now, UK and Japan falling into a technical recession is no joke at all. United Kingdom is the 6th largest economy in the whole world, and Japan, on the other hand, is the 4th largest economy in the whole world. Both are very major economic superpowers. Both are part of G7, that is wealthiest nations of the whole world, and both are also a very integral part of the G20. That means these two economies falling into a technical recession is a very serious issue and needs to be taken very, very seriously by the entire world. Now, before understanding that why these major economies fell into a technical recession, we have to understand few key terminologies. Now, first of all, we have to understand what do you mean by recession. Now, recession in simple terms is falling of economic activity or contraction of economic activity which is measured through GDP over a long period of time. So if the GDP of a country declines for several months at a stretch, we can call that situation as a recessionary situation. Now, recession in itself is not having any global meaning attached to it, or there is no formal definition of recession. But there is one term, that is technical recession, which does have a formal definition. So whenever the GDP of a nation declines for 2 consecutive quarters, we call that situation as a technical recession. Now, there is one more term which you must have heard, that is economic depression. Now, the Great Depression of 1930s might ring a bell in your mind. So, economic depression is a situation where there is a recession for several years at a stretch. So, economic depression is the widest of all. Whenever there are multiple recessions in an economy and recession prolongs for a longer period of time, that is, there is lower GDP, there is higher unemployment, and there is low consumer confidence in the economy, we call that situation as economic depression. And it can last for even 10 years or even more than that. Now, once we have understood this, you must have noticed that one term we kept on repeating a lot, that is GDP, Gross Domestic Product. Now, gross means the total value. Domestic means within the domestic territory of the country, and product, of course, means production of goods and services. So GDP refers to the final value of all the goods and services being produced within the domestic territory of the country. So what will be India's GDP? India's GDP will be all the goods and services being produced within the domestic territory of India in a financial year. Now GDP is calculated through a method known as expenditure method. And there are 4 components of expenditure method, and all these components constitutes to what we call as GDP, that is gross domestic product. The first component is consumption expenditure. That means the expenditure done by all of us in purchase of goods and services. So for example, we are buying clothes, we are buying watches, we are buying shoes, or any other expenditure made by us forms the part of consumption expenditure. Second component is that of investment. So when the private sector invests money, or when the private sector puts money for the production of goods and services, we call it as investments. It is also a crucial part of GDP. Third is the government expenditure. That is when the government spends money to build roads, to build highways, to build dams, to build airports, we call it as government expenditure. So the money spent by the government is known as government expenditure. And the fourth component is net exports. That is total exports minus total imports of the country. Now these 4 components form a very integral part of the GDP. And whenever we say that the GDP of the country is going up, we essentially mean that these 4 components are performing well. And whenever the GDP of the country is going down, some of these 4 components are not performing well. So these 4 components are very essential for us to understand how the GDP can be broken down into different parts. Now let us try to analyze that why these major economies of the world are falling into a technical recession. Now, there are some common reasons because of which world economy is not performing well, and I have clubbed these reasons under 3 categories. First set of reasons is the protectionist wave and the deglobalization situation in the whole world. Now, as you know, that the world is moving towards a deglobalization phase. That is, there are trade wars happening, import tariffs are very, very high, import duties are being levied by the countries, trade is getting restricted, and there are examples of countries like United States, China, Russia, and also European Union, which are involved in this protectionist tendencies. Now, that is hampering global economy at a very, very large scale. Second set of reason lies in the COVID-19 pandemic. So the pandemic caused by coronavirus led to a massive worldwide lockdown. Now that hit the supply chains in a very, very major way. That led to job losses, income loss of people, and thereby decrease in the global demand. Until now, it has been very difficult for the global economy to recover from the COVID-19 pandemic. So that is the second set of reason. Third set of reason is the global conflicts which are ongoing. For example, your Russia-Ukraine war, or Israel-Hamas or Israel-Palestine conflict. Because of these global conflicts, there has been supply chain disruptions in the economy. And because of that, we see that the oil price have increased. And because of increase in oil prices, there has been increase in import bills of a lot of countries who are depending on oil imports. Because of these scenarios, the global economy is not performing well. Now let us try to understand that why United Kingdom as an economy has been performing poorly. Now United Kingdom has been weakest economy since the 2008 global financial crisis. And it has contracted by 0.3% in the quarter third of financial year 2023-2024. Now there are some major reasons because of which United Kingdom's economy is not performing well. The first major reason is Brexit. Now, because of Brexit, when United Kingdom exited from European Union, there has been reduction in the trade levels of UK with that of European Union. Because of reduction in trade, there has been a substantial hit on United Kingdom's economy. Second major reason is higher energy prices. Now, because of Israel-Palestine, because of Russia-Ukraine war, there has been supply chain disruption. Because of that, there has been reduced supply of oil, and because of reduced supply of oil, there has been increased in price of oil. And because of that, the energy prices in United Kingdom has hit a record high. So there has been 54% increase in oil prices and energy prices in United Kingdom in 2024. And this is because of these global conflicts. The third major reason is increase in interest rates in the economy. So there has been increase in the overall interest rates in United Kingdom. Because of that, the credit has become very expensive. Because of credit becoming expensive, people are not taking loans. When people are not taking loans, investment will be lower and consumption expenditure will also be lower. Because of these reasons, United Kingdom is not performing well. And if you see the external sector of United Kingdom, there has been a substantial decline in the overall exports of the country since last many years. So it has been a long-term trend where the trade balance of United Kingdom has not been performing very well. Now, to mask this situation, United Kingdom has been increasing the defense expenditure to great heights. And the overall government expenditure on defense has also hit a record high. United Kingdom's people have been paying more for electricity, they have been paying more for the gases. Most hit are the common people who are living in the United Kingdom. Now, second major economy which has collapsed is that of Japan. Now, Japan's collapse has been a little bit unexpected for the global economy. Now, Japan's economy contracted by 0.4% in quarter third of financial year 2023-2024. Now, Japan's economy earlier was at third place in the world's top 10 largest economy, and it dropped to fourth place and it was replaced and overtaken by Germany. So now Japan is the fourth largest economy in the whole world. And there are several reasons because of which Japan's economy contracted. First is the private consumption expenditure. So private consumption expenditure in Japan decreased by 0.2%. Also, there has been decline in the private investments by 0.1%. Now, if the private investments are declining, that means people would not be getting a lot of wages. If people are not getting a lot of wages, that means their consumption expenditure will also decline, and which ultimately means overall GDP of the country will face a downturn. Also, there is one more major issue with Japan, that is aging and shrinking population. So the average age of Japan's population has been increasing over the last many years, and the population is shrinking because old age population in Japan is far high as compared to major other countries. Also, last but not the least, major reason of Japan's economy being collapsed is that of inflation. So inflation in Japan's economy has hit a 4-decade high. That means the inflation levels in Japan are very high. The prices of the products and services, prices of the goods and services are at record 4-decade. And contrary to this, stock market in Japan has been seeing a upward trend. which makes us question that is the GDP of the country or the economic performance of the country that closely related to the stock market or not. Now that is for some other day's discussion. We have to see that stock market's performance and the economic performance of the country, they are not going hand in hand since last many years, and this trend we have seen in a lot of other countries as well. Now we have to understand that in this hyper-globalized world, where all the economies are so much interconnected that borders are virtually non-existent, financial connectivity is super high, the global connectivity is also very, very high. In this whole hyper-globalized environment, if one economy contracts or if there is a negative impact on one economy, it can send waves of negative impacts to the other economies as well. So technical recession of two countries can have multitudinal impact, can have even a snowball effect on the other major economies of the world. That is why it is very crucial for us to understand that what will be the impact of this recession in some major economies to the entire global economy. And we will understand this impact one by one by taking the example of India. Now, first major impact will be that on external sector of any of the countries. See, if any of the major countries in the world move into a recession, external sector of the other countries will substantially get hit. Because if there is a recession in some countries which are a major player in the world economy, like United Kingdom and Japan, of course it is going to hit the demand of those people who are living in the country. See, if few countries are in a recessionary period, that means people in those countries would not be having money to spend on goods and services. If people are not having money to spend on goods and services, of course they won't be demanding goods and services from the other countries, because of which global demand might contract. And if the global demand contracts, it decreases, there can be reduction in exports of other countries as well. And because of reduction in exports, there can be negative trade balance, which can negatively impact the GDP of the other countries which are not directly related with the countries who are facing recession. So that is one part. Second part is that of remittances. That means the money which comes to another country from outside, that is unilateral one-way transfer. Now let's take example of India. Now India received $125 billion in remittances in 2023. Now if there is global recession, if the people are not having money, how can they send remittances? And remittances forms a major chunk of the economy and major chunk of the economic performance. If remittances are less, that means again economy would be negatively hit. Now third major factor is the flow of investments. That is FDIs, FIIs and FPIs, foreign direct investments, foreign institutional investments and foreign portfolio investments. Now if the global demand is less, if in the world people are not having enough money, how can they invest into the other countries? If some major economies of the world are contracting, how can people in those economies invest into other countries? People would not be having a lot of money. So FDIs into other countries, let's take India's example, will also be hit. FPIs in India will also be hit. So overall foreign investments in our country will diminish and their level will decrease, which will again lead to our economy being negatively impacted. Now let's talk about job market. So there will be a substantial job loss in the case of MNCs in our country as well. So multinational corporations, they also employ a major chunk of people in India's case and in other countries' case as well. And if those MNCs belongs to the United Kingdom or Japan, there are high chances that these companies will try to cut their losses by laying off the employees. So there can be substantial job loss as well. And also there can be a major negative impact on the stock markets and financial markets as well. Because stock markets and financial markets, in a way, they are interrelated to the economic performance of a country. And if the economic performance is not well enough, it can be seen in the stock market and the financial market in most of the cases. So if economic performance is low, stock market might also get negatively impacted. And as you know, financial sectors of major countries of the world, they are very much interconnected. So disruption in one financial sector can lead to a heavy disruption in other as well. And last but not the least is the case of Indian students or the students who are studying abroad. So we all know that the number of Indian students studying in United States, in United Kingdom, Canada and New Zealand and Australia are very high. If these countries are suffering with technical recession, there are high chances that our Indian students who have went there to study, they might also face job losses. They might not get jobs there. Now, this is not a very much discussed about fact, but this is very substantial impact on our Indian diaspora. So our Indian diaspora will also be very much hit because of this global recession which is ongoing. Now overall we reach to a single conclusion that if some major economies of the world are not performing well, there are high chances that impact could also be seen in the other economies as well, which is why it is very important for us to take remedial measures. Now, if we talk about India's case, now India's economy is fundamentally very strong. If you see the GDP of India is close to $3.7 trillion. And we are on the path of having a $5 trillion economy in the coming few years. Now, if you see India's rank in the world's 10 largest economy, India ranks at 5th position behind United States, China, Germany and Japan. Also, India is the 3rd largest fintech economy in the whole world. And that being said, there are other fundamental indicators in which India has been performing pretty good. If we talk about retail inflation, India's inflation is under check, that is, it is under 4% plus minus 2%. If we talk about poverty, India uplifted 24.8 crore people out of multidimensional poverty in the last 9 years. If we talk about agriculture sector, India's agriculture sector has been robust and its performance has been good enough in the last many years. If we talk about the trade, external sectors, India's current account deficit has narrowed down over the last many years because of increase in exports. If we talk about the government sector initiatives, many government sector initiatives like PM Jan Dhan Yojana, other initiatives like Skill India, Stand Up India, Startup India, or other infrastructure related projects as well, because of these projects, India's economy has become fundamentally very strong. And in Budget 2024, you could have seen that the capital expenditure of India is to the tune of 11.11 lakh crores, which is very huge and humongous if compared to a country like India. And this is all for making our economy fundamentally very strong. And also, if you see the consumption expenditure and private investments, which are very integral components of the GDP, these components are also very strong in the case of India. And last but not the least, the COVID-19 recovery which India had. So in COVID-19, as you know, India, as like the whole world, also went into a technical recession. But the very next year, that is 2021, India grew at a whopping 9.1% rate. That means India saw a V-shaped recovery and India recovered quite well from the COVID-19 pandemic. All these indicators or all these things suggests just one thing, that India's fundamentals are very strong. Now, the point is not that India's economy is not facing any issues. Yes, of course, there are several issues with India's economy. There is high level of unemployment, poverty is substantially very high in our country, and there are several other issues like income inequality, wealth inequality in our country, which needs to be corrected. And we have to be proactive, we have to be vigilant enough to correct these issues. But the point here is that India's economy is strong, it's resilient, and its fundamentals are very strong, that even if there is a global recession, India's economy has the strength to grow at more than 7% rate. Of course, our aims and efforts should be to strengthen our economy even further so that any such major downturns in the entire world, if it happens in future, India would be able to sustain and pass through it bravely and diligently. So now the final question is that is 2024 a year of global recession or not? Now the answer to it is very simple. Currently, the world economy is not into a recession. Only few major economies of the world are in a technical recession. But if the trend continues, if the right steps are not taken, if the remedial measures are not taken, the time is not far where the global economy will also suffer a recession, because there are several economists which are pointing out that if the global economy goes into a recession right now, it can be even worse than the 2008 global financial crisis. And it can also be worse than the 1930s depression, Great Depression. So, what is required is that all the major international institutions like World Bank, IMF, WTO and others, plus the national governments, should come together, should sit down and form remedial strategies. So, fiscal and monetary policy of major economies of the country should align in a way so that it prevents any major global economic setback. That is what the need of the hour is. So fiscal prudence, fiscal consolidation and right mix of proper fiscal and monetary policy by all the national governments, all the major countries in the world is required to avoid global recession 2024 and also to avoid any such recession in the coming future. Do let me know in the comment section what are your views surrounding the global recession 2024 and I'll be happy to read them. All the very best and have a nice day.